Thank you, Frank, and welcome, everyone. I'm here this afternoon to support Vice President for Athletics Paul Krebs and the decisions that have been made the last 2 days. We've worked hard at the University of New Mexico to integrate athletics into the fabric of the university, and I believe the decisions we'll be talking about this afternoon are in the best interests of the university, athletics, and our football program. I'm also here to support our players and coaches. They are continuing to work hard both on the field and in the classroom. Events like these are difficult for everyone involved, but for no one more than Coach Locksley and his family. I know he had the greatest hopes and aspirations when he joined the Lobos, even though he had to deal with fewer scholarships and other program limitations due to problems that occurred long before he came on the scene. We've got to remember that coaches are responsible for these young men as student athletes, and Coach Locksley's players have done outstanding academic work. Last fall, 13 Lobo football players made the Mountain West All-Academic team. That's the most ever. In the spring of 2010, they had their second highest GPA in the past 10 years. Coach Locksley has also instilled in his players the spirit of community service. Last year alone, Lobo football amassed 560 hours of community work, speaking in classrooms, visiting hospitals, working with boys and girls clubs. Despite the disappointments on the playing field, these student athletes will emerge as better, more compassionate, well-rounded individuals, which is a testament to their time here. I want to thank Coach Locksley for his hard work and energy and wish the very best for him and his family as they move on to the next phase of their lives. I've gotten to know them personally and hold them in the highest regard. I also want to thank and challenge our wonderful Lobo fans. I want to thank you for your patience, and I want to challenge you to join and support us now. We need you more than ever. I ask that you rally around Lobo football coach, Barlow, and our entire team. We've got a huge game here this weekend against New Mexico State. It's the Rio Grande rivalry, and we need our fans to come out and support their Lobo team. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I want to take some time to kind of walk everybody through the timeline of the decisions we've made, a little bit about where we've been, and most importantly, where I think we're headed. As you all know, Coach Locksley's been fired. We've replaced him with George Barlow as our interim head coach. In the end, Coach Locksley was 2-26, and we had a really, in my opinion, a divided, apathetic fan base, and it was time for a change. The timeline, when we talk about when the decision was made, why was the decision made, when it was made, I think we have to go back to, at the end of last year, consecutive 1-11 seasons, Coach Locksley and I had some pretty extended, pretty detailed conversations about the future of Lobo football. Certainly we were concerned about the lack of wins, concerned about some of the embarrassment off the field, but in his opinion and in my opinion, we thought the program was headed in the right direction. President Schmidt alluded to some of the scholarship limitations, which there's no question those hurt us. But I was excited about the future. I think Coach Locksley was very positive. His history at being with other programs thought year 3 was going to be a milestone in turning the corner. And we also recognized the first 5 games of the year were going to be very important litmus test of how far we had come. I think Coach was excited enough, felt good enough about what had happened, and certainly while I was very positive, I thought I needed to do what was in the best interest of the university, and so we discussed renegotiating Mike's contract, made an amendment where there was some provisions for a reduced buyout on behalf of the university, as well as an incentive to incentivize Coach Locksley should we have the successful season like we thought we were going to have. I think suffice it to say, the not only were we not winning, but some of the mistakes, the penalties, the turnovers, the intensity during the games, after 4 games, I frankly got to the point where I didn't think there was change. We weren't any better. And while we were still a young team, we weren't playing the way I thought we should be playing. We weren't showing the progress that I thought we expected to have. Mike and I always talked about Sam Houston State and New Mexico State being kind of big markers in terms of the progress of the team, and losing the game Saturday night in a very disappointing loss, and then the incident that happened Saturday night, which I will go into in significant detail. At that point in time, I had a very brief conversation with Mike after the game, very limited conversation. But I think anybody in a position of leadership understands that you don't make a decision in the heat of the emotion. I certainly was not going to make a decision Saturday night. I'd had no conversation with Coach Loxley Saturday night about his career being over. I wanted to sleep on it, or maybe a better word is try and rest. I got no sleep Saturday night, tossing and turning, trying to figure out what was in the best interest of the young men in our program and our football program. In the end, I made a decision that I thought needed to be made, which was call President Schmidley Sunday morning, and let me back up. At that same time, once I figured out where I thought I was, I got a call from Coach Loxley Sunday morning asking me what I thought, where were we headed, and basically at that point, I told Coach Loxley that I did not see any good ending to this story. That based upon where we were headed, I didn't see any way that this would end on a positive note for him. And while in general, and I've been quoted on this before, I'm not a big fan of making coaching changes in the middle of the season. I felt it was the appropriate time. I told Coach that to me it was a matter of time, whether the decision was made today or into the future. I thought his tenure at the university would end at the end of the football season. And I thought, frankly, it might end sooner than that, that I wanted to confer with the president, give him my recommendation, but I would get back to Coach. President Schmidley and I talked Sunday morning. I made the recommendation to him that we fire Coach Loxley and fire him immediately. The president accepted that recommendation, and then we began to put the wheels in motion to do all the things that one needs to do to make that happen. I had a subsequent conversation with Mike and Mike's agent, Trace Armstrong. Met with Coach Loxley at 4 o'clock with Tim Cass of our staff and President Schmidley. Shortly after that meeting, we met with Coach Barlow, asked if he would assume the position of head coach, met with the staff, and then Coach Loxley had an opportunity to meet with the young men in the team. And I must tell you that Coach Loxley has handled this situation with incredible class. His words to the team were inspiring, were meaningful, talked about doing the right thing, going to class, being responsible socially, talked about how he was accountable, that in the end it rested on his shoulders, he alone, and it was he took total responsibility, talked about an adult having to be accountable, and he was held accountable, and challenged the team to go out and fulfill their goals for the rest of the year. So that's the timeline of how these decisions have come down. I want to talk in great detail about what happened on Saturday night, what I believe I know, what I don't know, and more importantly, what we're doing about the situation. The young man driving the car who was cited for DUI is a longtime friend of Miko Loxley. They played high school football together. They grew up together. He was driving Miko's car. Now, the car may have been registered in Mike or Kia's name. Frankly, I don't know which, or maybe perhaps both. It was Miko's car. My understanding, this young man had been living with Miko for a month, sleeping on his couch. He had moved from Chicago, moved out of his home, was not enrolled in school, was trying to get a job, he may be enrolled in CM for all I know. He was not recruited by the University of New Mexico. He was not a recruit. He was not here on an official visit. He was not here on an unofficial visit. Everything we have, all the information available to us at this time, he was not a recruitable athlete. Now, because of the potential of a possible NCAA violation, we have a process we follow. Whenever there's a violation that we think we may have committed ourselves, self-reporting, and because of the profile of this, the magnitude, and how this thing has spiraled, we have instigated our internal process where we're doing a compliance, following our normal compliance protocol, which we do anytime there's the potential of a violation. We're following the written protocol we have. We expect to complete that within the next 72 hours, certainly no later than the end of the week. We do not believe any NCAA rules were violated. We do not believe this young man was a recruit. We do not believe he was here on any kind of official, unofficial visit. He was a friend of Miko's, is a friend of Miko's, Mike's son, but we're following our process to the fullest. And while we don't expect to find anything, if we do, we will take the appropriate and warranted action. But it's one more black eye. It's one more issue surrounding our football team that leads to a further division of our fan base, embarrassment for the university, and embarrassment for all of us involved. I want to talk a little bit about the economics of this situation. I think most, by now, over the past 3 years, we've had repeated requests for Coach Loxley's contract. I can't believe anybody in the media doesn't have a copy of it. Countless copies, but we've brought copies here so that if there's any question about what is in the contract, what is in the addendum, you all have a copy. As with most university employees who are dismissed in the middle of a year, of a contract year, we owe Mike the majority of his salary. Basically, we owe him minus a marketing component for the rest of this year and $150,000 for the next 2 years. And we're in discussions with Mike's agent to finalize his departure from the university. That's not finished. Obviously, if some major violation or violations period showed up as a result of our investigation, it may change the way this departure occurs, but we do not expect that to happen. We will use no student fees, no state money to this compensation that is owed Mike Loxley. Many people don't know, nor do they understand, that we self-generate 85% of our budget. By our reckoning, that's the highest percent of self-generated monies in our conference. We're very proud of that fact. And we'll use other sources of revenue. We'll seek donor funds, and we'll seek to raise money, but we will not be using state money or student fees to pay off Coach Loxley. I know the question will be asked, can we afford it? I don't mean to lecture, but let me give you a little sense of how I think college athletics works. College athletics is a coach-driven enterprise, coach-driven. The great programs are great because they have outstanding coaches, whether it's Coach Alford of our staff, Coach Birmingham, Coach Nelson, Coach Franklin, you go down the litany, Coach Fishbein of our great coaches. You're only as good as your head coach. The head coach recruits, hires the assistants, they recruit the student athletes, they demand the accountability in the classroom, on the playing surface. You're successful in college athletics because you have great coaches. We compete on a national level. We're not competing against New Mexico State. We're competing nationally for talent, for recruits, and for head coaches. It is commonplace in our enterprise that coaches have buyouts in their contract. It is industry standard across the board. No qualified, talented coach who's in demand is going to come to a university that does not offer them financial security, including a buyout. We're not making the market, we're trying to compete in that market. And if we were not to do that, if we chose not to put buyouts in our contracts, we would be competing for a very limited talented pool, and I would tell you that we ought to greatly lower our competitive expectations because we would not be successful. From 2003 to 2009, the last 7, well, actually not counting the last 2 years, the previous 7 years, we've averaged almost $2 million in ticket sales. Almost $2 million in ticket sales, 1.95 to be exact by my numbers. A high of 2.1 and a low of 1.7 million. This year, our projections are somewhere between 1.2 and 1.4 million in ticket sales, probably end up about 1.3 million. That's 650,000 below our average and almost 800,000 below the high. We had to make a change. We needed to make a change. We expect our fan base to rally. Lobo fans are great. If we put a product on the field, we do the right things, our fans turn out. Doesn't matter whether it's volleyball, soccer, basketball, you name it. And our season ticket sales dropped 25%, their lowest point in the last 7 years. People were not coming to games. We were not generating the income we need to make this program work. So with this change in staff and moving forward, we do expect to see a rebound there, and the revenues will be there to support the program. In my opinion, Mike Locksley's a good man. He's made some mistakes in judgment along the way, but we all do. But he's a good man. What I know is he's an outstanding recruiter. He's put our program on solid academic footing. He talks constantly about social responsibility for the young men in our program. We have good young men in our program. And he's preached accountability. His message walking out the door was, guys, be accountable. But there's a black and white to what we do, wins and losses. We're 2-26, and we've had off-the-field issues. As the athletic director, I'm judged by who I hire and how successful our hires have been. This was not successful. This did not work out. Hindsight's 20/20. If I'd have known now, if I knew then what I knew now, would we have made a different decision? Yes. When you hire an assistant coach, there are calculated risks you take. But please understand, Coach Locksley was in high demand. He was incredibly well thought of nationally. At the time we hired him, he was a finalist for 2 or 3 other head coaching jobs. Where do we go from here? I think this is a great job. We're in a tremendously competitive conference. The dynamics are changing. But I constantly hear about what we don't have in facilities, what we don't have in financial support, and I'm here to tell you those facts simply are not correct. We have outstanding facilities. They compare very favorably to our peers in our conference. Our coaches' salaries are some of the highest in our league. Our budgets are some of the highest in our league. The idea, the myth that we're underfunded in football is simply not true from my perspective. We spent $16 million in the last 4 years on facilities in football, or facilities that greatly benefit our football program. We've raised salaries. We've raised annual support. I love it here in New Mexico. The Texas Tech AD, Kirby Hocutt, as we were standing at yet another lightning delay at the football game at Texas Tech, pointed to the mountains, pointed at our facilities, said, "This is incredible. I've never been here before. What a backdrop for college football." He's absolutely right. We can be a very good football team. We can compete nationally. I see no reason why that can't be done. Now, I have a favor to ask. We've got 85 guys in our locker room that are hurting right now. We've got a football staff that is committed to Lobos, that is committed to the University of New Mexico. Our fans need to turn out Saturday. This is our biggest rival. Whether you like Paul Krebs, whether you like Mike Locksley, whether you like President Schmidley, this is cherry and silver versus the Aggies. Damn it, our fans need to respond and support our team. And I challenge our fans, I challenge our lettermen, I challenge any Lobo fan to be here Saturday. We have the best fans in the country. It doesn't matter the sport. When we're good, they turn out, they show up. Our guys are dedicated, they deserve the support, and I would ask that we turn out Saturday and cheer on a Lobo victory.
With that, we'll open up for questions. There's a lot of media folks here. I ask that you get recognized by Paul. We're going to look at you, a question and a follow-up, then we'll pass it on to someone else, please.
Coach, I'm sorry, Krebs. There was it's written in the contract, just cause for termination, a repeated violation of minor rules. Was that discussed, and did the university investigate that to try and avoid a larger buyout?
I think it's safe to say that we've investigated and are aware of what's in the contract. As I said, we're not finished with our discussions, but if there were a buyout for cause, you certainly would know about it.
Coach, when you're talking about the economics of the athletic department, I'd like to, if you could, tell us, you know, what are the expenses of the football program versus the revenues that it takes in? And what is the gap, the difference there?
You know, Stuart, I probably, off the top of my head, without numbers in front of me, I cannot sit here and tell you, here's what we generate in expenses, here's what we generate in revenues. The expenses are fairly easy to quantify. Revenues, how many people are in the Lobo Club because they specifically want to donate for football. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head.
Paul, you used the national organization to bring Moxley, and you're going to use somebody like that again, a research committee or whatever, to bring a new coach in. And then if Barlow applies, is he going to be considered?
You know, Van, we're 24 hours into this process. We've already got the wheels turning on where we're going and how we're going. As to whether we'll use a national firm, we haven't made that decision yet. I can guarantee if George goes 8-0, you better believe that he'll be greatly considered. George was named interim head coach because he's well respected by our players. He's well respected by the assistant coaches. He's our associate head coach. He's in a tough situation. And I think he's a tremendous professional, as are the other coaches on our staff, and I would expect our guys to rise to the occasion and perform well and get the most out of the team.
Mr. Krebs, two parts to this question. The first is, can you be more specific as to how much he's getting? When you say he's getting the majority of his salary, does that mean the base salary, or is that including the $450,000 that comes along with it? And is that $150,000 a year, is that for the next 2 years, or is that?
Yes, I thought I was very specific. It's $150,000 a year for the next 2 years. It's very well documented in the contract. He gets his remaining income for this year minus marketing money.
Can you talk about how the off-the-field issues, specifically the most recent with the Joshua Butts incident, played into your decision? You didn't mention how that exactly played into your overall decision with this.
Well, I think there's certainly been well documented a lot of the issues off the field. There's a lot of distractions. I think I pretty well laid out what I believe happened Saturday night. But anytime you have those instances, that noise away from the field, I think it divided our fan base. It became increasingly popular, I think, for Mike to lead this team. And while that was not the decision was not a specific result of that, all those issues cumulatively weigh on the program and factor in the decision. In the end, we were 2-26, and our fans weren't coming to games.
Paul, any worries with President Schmidley retiring that will hurt your search for a new coach?
I've said it numerous times. We could not have a president that's more supportive of an athletic program, but we also have an administration from at the senior level to our regents who value athletics, who understand what a strong, vibrant athletic program, when it's done the right way, how it can add value to our community, to the state, to the university. So as long as our board and continues to be as supportive as they have. The other point is that President Schmidley will be here throughout the year and will continue to offer support, and we'll continue to engage him where and when we can.
In this hiring process, how much responsibility do you take for this hire that didn't work out?
Well, I take total responsibility for any hire that I make. A key part of what an athletic director does is hire coaches. And I think we've hired 10 coaches since I've been here. And while we're not batting 1,000, I would say our batting average is pretty darn good. I think we've done some great things with our program, and our coaches have done wonderful things. But this did not work, and so I expect to be held accountable for that.
Are you going to require head coaching experience of the next person?
In the end, Dennis, what a head coach, what experience, somebody who sat in the head coaching chair, what it gives you is a record, some black and white definitive about how good somebody can be. It's not hard to make projections. It tends to be a safer pick. And if you look at our hires from Coach Alford, Coach Franklin, Coach Birmingham, Coach Nelson, those were all previous head coaches. Most of the people we've hired have been previous head coaches. And I think it's less risky, and there's more proven knowledge to go on. And so I think there's certainly a preference to somebody being a head coach. But having said that, there are outstanding young assistants, there are outstanding people out there, and we will not dismiss them simply because they don't have head coaching experience.
Paul, the name Mike Leach has already come up, and I know it's quick, and it hasn't been 24 hours. But is that somebody that, I mean, would it be a stretch to say that he's a candidate, or he could be a possible candidate? I know you haven't made it full list.
I think the best thing and the best way for me to answer that, Van, is that now that this search has started, we're not going to comment on any candidates. I think it's safe to say that we're going to give preference to people with head coaching experience. We're not going to dismiss assistants. I think it's helpful and strongly encourage that people either have ties to this state, ties to the Southwest, particularly New Mexico and Texas, fertile recruiting ground for us. But as to the candidacy of specific coaches, you won't hear me comment on anybody until the search is over.
Paul, do you feel that somebody that you want to bring in, someone of name recognition that maybe Lobo fans can relate to? Because when you hired Coach Loxley, obviously a coordinator at Illinois, probably not your basic fan, probably didn't know exactly who he was.
You know, I think that's a fair statement that if you hired a sitting head, or either a sitting head coach or somebody who's formerly been a head coach, that there's some name recognition that comes with that, and presumably there's some instant credibility that might go with the hire as opposed to a wait-and-see attitude with an assistant coach. And I think all that factors into the decision-making process. But in the end, you hire the individual that you think is the best fit, that is going to work best. All of us who have made personnel decisions understand that when you hire, you think you know what you're getting, but you never really know. And there always is a risk associated with any hire.
You mentioned that none of that money is coming from state money or taxpayer money to pay out Mike Loxley. However, that's got to take somewhat of a hit on your department. Can you talk about where that's hitting you exactly, and how maybe parts of the program will be impacted by the loss of that money?
Well, it'll certainly be a challenge for us. It'll be difficult for us to operate with a balanced budget for the year. My sense is that we'll probably have a deficit. There are ways out of that depending upon what happens in our conference, and somebody might make it into a BCS bowl. There's money to be generated. There are other streams of revenue. If we exceed revenue expectations in other sports, as I've mentioned, we'll try and raise funds to support the football program. There's always the opportunity that you could play a guarantee game for money in the future that helps pay the bills. That's not a preferred methodology, but we're one day into this, so there's still some unanswered questions. I understand that.
Do you have a timeline for anyone with the head coach?
Well, I think if there's an advantage to doing this now, it means we're out publicly looking at coaches, evaluating candidates. We have ample opportunity to assess and evaluate and really do our homework. I think in an ideal scenario, you'd have somebody in as soon as the week or two after the season. But if there's somebody coming from the NFL, if they're a head coach whose team is in a bowl game or still playing or an assistant at a BCS level school, that timeline might not work for them, and so it really depends ultimately on who the person selected is.
You mentioned that in the off season you thought this team would be successful after back-to-back one-win seasons and retaining Loxley. Can you kind of explain why you had that optimism?
Well, I think we've tried to allude to a couple of them. We had scholarship limitations. Those have been slowly being reduced to where we had more young men in our program. I thought in spite of all the issues that occurred, Mike's an outstanding recruiter. We have very talented young men in our program. The talent pool was increasing. We have better athletes, bigger, stronger, faster. I think the changes he made in his coaching staff were very positive. I also saw a lot of young players who were maturing and growing, so I thought there was a reason for optimism.
Paul, is it not appropriate to hire a coach before the end of the season, giving these coaches currently on staff the opportunity to win a job or to impress you, or can you name someone before the Boise State game?
In the end, Scott, it depends on who we're looking at. I mean, if obviously somebody is currently coaching, no matter where that is, it might make it difficult for them to leave before our season's over. I don't want to sit here and say we can or can't do one or the other. I think when I'm asked a timeline, I think a reasonable timeline is the end of our season. Does that mean we could do it sooner? Potentially. Does it? My guess is it's more likely that it's going to occur shortly after the end of our season, which is we play a game in December, which is very late in the season. I think that's probably a reasonable starting point, and then again that changes depending upon who's in the pool and who our finalists are.
So as a follow-up, does that hinder your opportunity to recruit for that first year for a coach that may need to fill some holes?
I don't think so. In the end, Scott, you're not recruiting for 1 year. You're recruiting for a program. If somebody's here in early December, it's a challenge. You're on a little bit of a fast track, but certainly it can be done. I think the real advantage that I see is we've got time and we can really do some exhaustive research and try and get the very best candidate we can, and we're not going to be compressed to make decisions in a very short vacuum.
Paul, you talked about bigger, stronger athletes. Are you concerned about any of those guys leaving the program?
I think one of the things that gets lost in all of this, and President Schmidley alluded to it, the people really affected here are the 85 guys on our team and the 9 assistant coaches. It's tough to be an assistant coach in Division I football. We have 4 new coaches on our staff. They're here 6, 8, 9 months, and their life's been turned upside down. And they're the ones that really are impacted by this, and the 85 men on the team. So, yeah, we're concerned about the players. We're concerned about we've challenged them to do the right thing, to go to class, to be accountable, to set yourself up so that when the new staff comes in here, or new, old, whoever is here, that you're in position to be academically eligible and ready to go. But it is a challenge.
Well, based on the fact that the university was on the hook for a chunk of change because of this, with the new head coach, does that change your approach as far as length of contract or the money that's offered?
I think all those things depend upon the individuals involved. I think we have the resources we need to compete at the highest level, and I don't think, and that doesn't mean that we can be silly and throw money away and not make solid financial decisions, but I think we have the resources to compete in our conference and to compete nationally in the sport of football.
What about additional morality clauses in the next coach's contract, or can you talk about how off-the-field character will play into your decision on the next coach?
We'll do what we do every time we hire a coach. We'll do an evaluative process, try and exhaust all options, and write the best contract we can.
If there's not anything else, I want to let Paul introduce yours. Coach Barlow to get to practice here in a little bit. I want to make sure you've got some time to answer a few questions.
Well, I'll be very brief. We're under difficult circumstances. We've asked Coach Barlow to act as our head coach. I think he's a man of great character. There's no question after talking to our staff and our student athletes, he has respect of the coaches, respect of the athletes. He's in a very unusual and also a situation that has great opportunity. We've got 8 games left to play. That's a lifetime. And as an interim head coach, to be in the lead for 8 games, I think he has a chance to let his personality, his style, his leadership emerge. And we think under challenging circumstances he will do a great job. So Coach George Barlow.
All right. Take a deep breath because it's been an interesting 2 days. But First of all, I'd like to thank President Smedley and Mr. Krebs for this opportunity, because it's a great opportunity that I'm excited about and ready to hit the ground running 100 miles an hour to see if we can try to win some games. And again, I'm very excited about this opportunity. But at the same time, I'm a little sad too, because Coach Locks is a really good friend of mine. And one of the reasons that I'm here is because Coach Loxley brought me here. And I'm just sad because we weren't able to get the job done that he wanted. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to thank him personally for everything that he's done for me and my daughter since I've been here at the University of New Mexico, and I wish him and his family all the best. With that being said, like Mr. Krebs was talking about, I'm taking this job under some tough circumstances, but I don't worry about that too much, because the one thing that I do is I coach ball because I have a love for the kids. And this gives me an opportunity to continue to coach ball and be the leader of this team and see if we can go out there and create some game plans and get the kids playing the way we want them to and at the level that we think they can play to win some games. And I think this Saturday will be our first test to go do that. Well, I'm not trying to take this job to just try to salvage or just kind of make do. We want to go out and win games. And like I said, Saturday is a great opportunity for us to do that, and we're going to definitely try to go out and do that. And the one thing, like Mr. Krebs was talking about earlier, was I like to also challenge the fans to know that this is about the kids also, which I know as a ball coach, that they're going through a tough transition right now. They lost a coach that they care a lot about. And they're hurting a little bit. So one of the things that could really help, and along with us making adjustments as coaches, is the fans also coming out to support these kids in this time of transition for them. Because the one thing that they get excited about is walking out in the stadium here and lots of fans being out there to support them. Because those are the things that make kids smile and make them happy and get them enthused and energetic and get them playing at the level that we want to try to win some games. So I hope that's a possibility for us this Saturday, where we can get as many fans out here as possible to help us try to win a game. Because when kids are happy, they're smiling, that's the thing that I'm in this for. And I know there's a lot of people in this room that have kids, and when they're smiling, it makes everything all right. And that's going to be my job, to make sure these kids continue to be happy, they continue to get better as football players, and they continue to grow as young men, which Coach Locks has talked about with them from day one. So it's my intentions, like I said, to go out and win games. And it's my intentions to represent this football team, the state of New Mexico, and the University of Mexico in the most positive manners that I can for the next 10 weeks and 8 football games.
Next question?
Coach, how will you be different from Mike Loxley, and what do you hope to accomplish in these 8 weeks?
What I hope to accomplish in these 8 weeks is to win as many football games as we can. Like I said, my joy is to coach ball and coach kids. And what I'm going to do is go out and try to, like I said earlier, is try to create the best game plan I possibly can so that we can win games and get these kids on the right track. As far as me doing things different from Coach Loxley, I'm sure there'll be a few philosophy changes here and there. But for the most part, I thought Coach Locks had a great plan. Unfortunately, if you've been in this coach's business a long time, that it doesn't always work out. But that doesn't mean it was always everything that he did wasn't up to par at what we needed to do to win, because he put a lot of hard work into trying to make this team a winner. So there was a lot of good things that he did that obviously I'm going to continue to use, but I'm also trying to put my print on it also.
Coach, if you're able to have some success, you heard what Paul said, if you're able to have some success, would you be interested in making a job? I know that's putting you on the spot.
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely would be interested, because if you coach ball, as I say, that's the opportunity you look for. That's why I'm embracing this opportunity to be the head coach here. And if it gets, if I get a chance to be permanently, I would definitely enjoy the opportunity. Excuse me, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Right now, I'm gonna still do both.
Coach, is there any concern that assistant coaches and everything can be such a revolving door that guys may be thinking about their resumes and it could potentially end up in a lame duck situation?
With this staff, and I think myself included, I think we have a great group of professionals. And we've all talked about this as a staff. We're all going to make a commitment to these kids. Again, the guys that Coach Loxley hired, myself included, that they're not only good coaches, they're good people. And they understand, like I said before, and I'll keep saying it, it's about the kids. And they understand that, and we're going to do the best of our ability to win football games and not worry about that. Because, again, that's part of our existence. And guys that are professionals, they understand that, and they'll put that aside. And I know that these guys will, to coach these kids to the best of their ability to try to go out and win.
Mm-hmm. How do you see this affecting recruiting from today and moving forward for the rest of the season?
I'm sure it'll affect it some, but at the same time, like I said, we're professionals and we have to go out and still sell the university and sell that this is still a quality football program that that's going to be pretty good in the future, and that's about all we can really do.
Coach, have you had a chance to talk to any of the recruits?
No, because it's been pretty quick. Like I said, when I first got up here, it's been a crazy 2 days. You know, it all happened pretty quick.
Do you fear a mass exodus? A lot of players, particularly from the D.C., Maryland area, that pipeline coach Loxley had. Do you fear some of these guys are suddenly going to decide they'd rather be closer to home?
Not right now. I don't get that feeling. So I think these kids, they enjoy being here, but at the same time, they were pretty close to Coach Lox. And I've also grown to be pretty close to a lot of those kids also with helping, recruit that same area. So hopefully, the relationship they had with me also will, help some of those kids be comfortable enough to stay around and help us win some games.
What kind of a challenge is it going to be to have all this happen during rivalry to be able to play Mexico State? That's your biggest rivalry.
Right now, I think it'll be fine because a lot of times there's a lot of emotion with the rivalry week, and I think that'll just help even more where kids are going to focus and go out, and try to win games. And I don't think it'll affect us as much. I think the kids will rally around it and go out and play. But that's our job to get them to do that. And like I said, I'm more than prepared to do that. And our staff, like I said, they're professional guys, and they're more than willing to go out and get these guys ready, and that's what we're going to do.
Coach Loxley, did he give you any kind of words of encouragement, maybe words of advice when you did this position?
For the most part, I've known Coach Lox a while, but for the most part, he just told me to be me, and the kids will, they'll rally around me, and I just need to be me. And put my print on it and do all the things we need to do to try to go out and win games, and don't just try to salvage it. Try to go out and continue his mission to win football games here and make the best possible environment for the kids that we have now. Because like I said, my biggest joy is just making these kids smile, and they haven't had a whole lot to smile about here lately. So it's going to be my job to get that done, and winning does that.
Coach, this is not the first time you've been the interim head coach. Does it feel any different this time than the last time?
Yeah, it's quite a bit different because last time I only had to do it for one game. This time I'm doing it for 10 weeks basically in 8 games. So it's a lot different. It's 2/3 of a season, so it makes it a lot different. So there's going to be a lot more time put into it, a lot more commitment put into it, and it gives me a chance to, like I said before, put my stamp on some things that are going on and maybe make some tweaks here and there to where we can try to win some ball games.